episode number 5, as I'm here with Quinn. Quinn, can you tell us your last name too, or is that private?
No, it's Scannell.
Okay,
S.
Quinn.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice
yeah.
to have nice to meet you. So, for those who are joining late, we have a few. We've had a few episodes so far. We have had hitchhikers going across a couple continents. We've had a solo walker across Africa. We have had the world's longest triathlete, and now we have Quinn. So I'm going to start by asking Quinn a little bit about his story. It sounds like he's had quite an adventure. So Quinn, what's your last adventure? What'd you do?
So my last adventure was I started in September of last year, or now I guess 2023, and my plan was to go from Morocco all the way to South Africa, but I didn't want to hitchhike just by going through public transports. And then during that time, I kind of wanted to make a change. I wanted to make it all the way to Madagascar without a plane. That was the practice in theory. And I made it all the way to Kinshasa. Uh, the
DRC.
idea, yes, exactly.
So before you get into your experience in Kinshasa, I do want to break down a little bit. So you were going Madagascar, or you're going Morocco to Madagascar, and you said no. You said you wanted to hitchhike for some of it or part of it, or how? Like, what was your main method of getting?
um, I knew that it would be a long endeavor, so I did kind of a mix of both, but like mostly it was just public transport. And I mean, this is African public transport, so we have like shared taxis. We have
Yeah.
it's not a proper bus apart from like
No.
Morocco, and the Republic of Congo did have some nice buses, and Burkina Faso did,
And
surprisingly.
then and then in theory, when you get to the Madagascar, you take a boat at that point. Like that's the move.
So what I wanted to do was I wanted to go from Kinshasa, take the Congo River to Kisangani, because when I was really young, I read Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, and so I was always fascinated with that story of like traversing through Africa, and obviously the history of colonialization is horrible, but just the idea of adventure was kind of what attracted me. And then I watched Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now as a kid, and that was the same story, but they put it in Vietnam for American audiences. Um, and so that's kind of what inspired me to do this hypothetical trip. So I wanted to go from Kinshasa, Kisangani, that's where the river kind of ends, and then I would try to find a way to Goma to go through Rwanda and then try to get to all the way to Dar es Salaam, and then Dar
Okay.
es Salaam.
It looks like we had some people just join the live. For those of you guys who are just joining, Quinn's telling a story about going from Morocco all the way to Madagascar without a plane. And we are both Americans. We're telling our experience. I'm currently walking the continent of Africa myself. So he's getting into it right now. He's in telling his story. He's now in. At this point, you get to the DRC.
Um, yeah, so like it took about 8 months to get to DRC. Um, with them, I was taking my time. Certain places I would stay longer. I stayed in Dakar for 1 month because I tried to get uh, a visa to Mali 4 separate times. I wanted to go inland instead of along the coast, but that did not work out. They refused to give me
Dakar's
a
in
visa.
Senegal.
Dakar, yes, exactly, the capital of Senegal. Um, but I was
So when
trying
you
to
say
go.
you want,
Oh,
sorry, when you want to go inland, you're talking about like the Republic or like Chad, or like where are you trying to go?
basically all the way hypothetically, but I was trying to get a visa to Mali, and uh, right now there's a big Pan-African movement pushing kind of the Western colonial powers out by pushing out French and American troops of Chad, Niger, Burkina Faso, and so with that, they weren't at the time they weren't allowing Western tourists either, unfortunately. Um, so I couldn't get a visa. I stayed 1 month in Dakar just waiting. I would go to the embassy like every day, and they were very sympathetic, but it was the people in Bamako who were saying no.
So how'd you get around that?
Um, I just, you gotta accept it, and I just went along the coast. So I just stayed along the coast basically until I got to Cote d'Ivoire. So I went through Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and then I cut into Burkina Faso, um, all the way to like Ouagadougou, and then came down again. Uh, and That was because I was really interested in Thomas Sankara. He was the Pan-African leader in the 1980s, and he brought a lot of social change. He was the one that changed the name to from Upper Volta in English to Burkina Faso, and he was very big on promoting like free healthcare and a lot of social benefits to the Burkinabe people. Um, and so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to visit the country. I read his book, uh, and it was very hot, to say the least. If you're gonna go inland during your trip, you better be prepared for a bit of heat. It's gonna be pretty hot.
It's funny you mentioned the Burkina Faso connection. When I was in high school, we had a preacher from Burkina Faso come to my high school for a fundraiser. So like of all the random places in the world, like we had that pipeline, and we actually did a fundraiser. Talked to him for a couple of years. So I was thinking about on my walk passing through that area, but I'll ask you about that in a bit. Let's go more into your story.
Yeah. Um, and Basically, yeah, so I continued on and then I went down into Ghana and I went all the way down to Accra from Ouagadougou, obviously passing through a few places. And My main next objective was Nigeria. And Nigeria was, I actually had already gotten the visa because I knew that that was going to be one of the biggest hurdles of the trip. Um, one of the Facebook groups that I was a part of, everyone was saying it's better to just get it in advance, and I managed to get a 5-year visa. Um, so I postponed my trip by a week to Morocco just to fly to Atlanta to get the visa, and then I was able to go. But that was the only visa I got in advance that was necessary at the time. Um, and Nigeria was probably one of the highlights because I was in this place called Kano, which is kind of it's near the border of Niger. Um, I had an idea of maybe going to Niamey and cutting across to Zindar and then cutting down to Kano, kind of going uh, like the Sahel, the inner part of West and Central Africa really interested me, um, just because of the Pan African, just the history and what's going on there really attracted me. Um, and I went all the way to Kano. Uh, Kano was probably the highlight because in Nigeria, there's festivals going on like every day. It doesn't matter. There's just some sort of festival going on. The Nigerians are very festive. They just like to celebrate. It's kind of reminded me of India a bit, where like there's just always like a festival going on. Um, and they during that time, it just happened to be what was it called? Like it was called the Dunbar Festival, and that was basically where in because Nigeria is the most populous Muslim country in the world, actually, um, and so in the majority of the Muslims are in the north, Christians are more in the south, and in the north there they have an emir and kind of a series of clans, or like families where they'll have these huge, or not huge, they have these turbans where traditionally an Arab turban is just kind of wrapped around their head, but they have these two kind of things, or this knot with two ties sticking out, and that's kind of the traditional way that they would tie a turban in northern Nigeria. It's kind of the indication, and then based upon the color of the turban is based upon which clan you're part of, and then also it's determinant of like your rank in the hierarchy of the family or clan. And during this festival, it was just it was just everybody's family, or just everybody in the Kano state came to visit the Grand Emir, which I was able to see. It was one of the coolest things. It was so colorful, and it was um, one of the most unique experiences It was the highlight of my trip for sure. Um, but During that time, I was using my camera that I had in my phone to take pictures because that's my main medium. And during that time, I was just, I don't know, I was in the heat of the moment, wasn't paying attention, and I slipped my phone in my pocket. And at some point, someone pickpocketed me when we were in the just kind of everybody was trying to get pictures, like everyone was shoulder to shoulder. Someone got into my got got my phone, which uh, I'm telling you this because this caused a chain reaction of a lot of different things that preceded it, and I basically I was really screwed because I was in Kano, and what I wanted to do was cut across to Maduguri because Maduguri is a lot mm, less dangerous. Maduguri is where is Borno State. That's kind of right next to Lake Chad, and that's where ISWAP, ISIS of West Africa, and Boko Haram. That's their main stronghold there. That's where they come from. If you There's a lot of documentaries from about 2014 of Western journalists going there and them fighting Boko Haram. Right now, it's a relatively stable place. Um, Obviously, things change on a dime, particularly in Africa, so you never know. But I wanted to go there. I had one other traveler that I was in contact with, and he went there, and I managed to get because I wanted to cut in and then go to Niamey or how do you say it? Not Niamey, Njema. It's the capital of Chad. I'm probably mispronouncing it. Um,
You're, I don't think I don't think anyone's going to correct you or care that much.
yeah, probably not. But I wanted to go there, and I knew that there was a consulate. Um, I stopped in Abuja to get my Cameroonian visa because you needed to get it physically in your passport. Um, and Prior to trying to cross the border, and the idea was I would go through that little sliver of Cameroon that cuts into Lake Chad, and then you would have to cross into the capital of Chad, and then I would go down into Cameroon again because I had a multiple entry visa. I did go to Madugri, and they told me that I had to go all the way to Abuja again to get the visa because they would only allow the.
So give,
Uh,
for for those of us who aren't as strong at geography, give us distances.
so they said, I'll give you the kilometers and miles because so Madugri to Abuja round trip is about 1,700 kilometers, which is in miles. What that's
Like
1,200 miles
it's about 1,000, right?
or
Because
1,100, something like that.
yeah, yeah, something like that.
And so they were like, "That's the round trip," and they were like, "You can go back to Abuja." And my whole trip was to not take a plane. So I was like, "Shit, I really don't want to fucking do this. That sucks." And I was like, I tried to go there like over the course of 3 days. I had a friend that I met through Instagram. She was working with the NGO and so I was hanging out with her and I met some people working in Madugri. So it wasn't too bad to just chill for a while. Really expensive though. I like there's no cheap accommodation. I did try to use couch surfing, but nobody responded to me. Um,
Before you go on the couch surfing, I have a little vent on couch surfing. I've done couch surfing in a handful. It seems to be just like dudes looking to pick up girls are the hosts, or girls not wanting to host dudes because they're afraid of getting hooked. So just as like a single dude traveler, like I no one responds.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I've had some really great experiences, uh, like with staying with families. So if it's a family, it's actually a pretty solid bet. Um, and like I did a really great one with this guy named Mohammed in Attar, Mauritania, at the beginning of the trip. He was very wonderful. He was, you know, he didn't. I gave him some money afterwards, to thank him, but he didn't ask for it. I was because he went above and beyond. Like because we were gonna do the iron ore train, so
Yeah,
I was getting all the stuff ready, and he helped me like buy everything that I needed, and also
they just they just shut that down. By the way,
yeah, I saw that. Which honestly, I think, well, I didn't even go on top when I did it. I went into, So they stop once, and it's in this place called Shom. They stop. They start in Zuarat, which is like the little part up north, and then it comes down, and then it kind of follows the border with the Western Sahara. And they uh, they add a passenger car in Shom, so they stop. And I was with these two Swiss guys who they did it because not out of like Instagram clout or wanting to do it. They had flights in Dak in the Western Sahara to get back to Europe, and that was the quickest way to get to the border to New Abu Dhabi. And so I just kind of said fuck it, and I went with them, and that was a horrible experience. Holy Toledo, the like it's kind of like just absolute anarchy. Nobody has a real seat. We were the last people to get on, so we sat next to the toilet, and I just got a little spot, and I put my backpack underneath, and I just sat there, and we were on it for like 14 hours,
Oh.
and it was pretty gross. Like we were right next to the toilet, but like people were just pissing on the floor. No one gave a shit. They weren't even like aiming for the toilet. So it was like a pretty grim experience, and it was okay until the sun came out. Then the heat really brought all the smells.
Mm.
Because it goes through the night, so it was okay. It was, like, not horrible through the night, but then once we got, like, uh, the heat of the Sahara brought all those horrible smells out.
And for those of you guys who don't know what the iron ore train is, it's a train that goes through Mauritania that people often sit on top of, like a bunch of iron, basically, or coal or whatever. I'm not
Yeah,
super familiar.
it's
It's
just
pretty
basi
touristy. A lot of it on Instagram.
yeah, it's basically one of the top it's the only tourist thing to really do in Mauritania, and, like, it's way overhyped, would not recommend, like, I don't know, Uh, yeah, I just wouldn't recommend it to anybody. Not as dangerous as people say. People do that for the thumbnails to get clicks and stuff. It's not that dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous if you're like hanging off the side, you know?
Okay, so anyway, so backtrack it. So you're in
Madugri.
a
I was in
degree.
Madugri. So, Madugri, Borno State, and they weren't giving it to me. Like they called the ambassador, but they were pretty strict on the rules. You got to go back to Abuja. I wasn't gonna make that 1,700 kilometer trip, 1,000 mile trip. So I said, okay, I'm just gonna go a bit south down to Cameroon. But the thing is, the Samba forest, which is the forest just outside of Maduguri, is still controlled by like Wahhabist jihadist, like Boko Haram sort of groups. They're not as strong. They're not nearly as strong as they used to be, but um, they um, they'll still kidnap people. So the direct route that would take me to the nearest border checkpoint to get into Cameroon, I couldn't take. We had to take a detour, which took about an extra 3 hours. We did like, yeah, I think it was in total like 8 hours when it should have only taken five to get to get to this town of Yola. I forgot what the state was in Nigeria, but it's kind of still northern
So
Cameroon, northern.
you did 8 instead of 5 for safety reasons?
Yes, because
Okay.
nobody was going that way. Like, none of the public transport buses were gonna go that way because they knew that kidnapping like 3 days prior, they kidnapped a family of a Nigerian general, like, who was going on the road. So, like, there was nobody would be dumb enough to actually go down there, you know?
Oh,
Um, and so that the way I came in that road is the way I came out because that is the only place that is considered safe. My friend who works with like the United Nations and other NGOs there said that there were still like armed groups that attacked that road that we took, but it's still considered the safest. Um, so anything can happen still. Um, there was still some inherent risk I took by going over there, particularly by land. Um, and so I go to this place called Yola. Um, and it's just southern south of Madugri, and I was just there because it was the closest. I found on iOverlander the that was kind of where a lot of people crossed. People wrote that it was crossable. Technically, the borders between Cameroon and Nigeria have been closed since COVID, the land borders. But the locals kind of have been going back and forth, no problem. No one kind of, no one's stamping any passports. It's just kind of an open border, free trade, free movement agreements, and maybe unofficial.
Do you
But
think, because I have to cross that border. Do you think as a foreigner I'll have issues when I get there?
I think in the southern border, where you're probably gonna go, I think your problem will be just crossing the border, and because I've seen that road that most people take, it's pretty rough. I think you're better off. I think if you take the boat, I think that is a still dangerous, but probably more effective way to around it, in
Okay.
my opinion.
I'll definitely hit you up for more advice as I get later and further north. But anyway, don't mean to
Yeah.
cut you off. Carry.
No, no, no. And so that created uh I go from the next day, I try to cross the border and I'm the only foreigner. I paid extra. I paid like what was it? Um two was it 16,000 naira. I have it written in my blog how much that cost in US dollars, but I paid it was 8,000 to get to go Gorona, Gorona. I forgot what the town that, but it was basically the one of the most northern towns in Cameroon. I
Okay,
paid,
so I'm looking at 15,000 naira to USD. It's okay. That's like $11.
yeah, and so that would
Okay.
take me from Yola to this town, Gorna, I think it was. Um, I'd have to look at a map, but it's like northern, basically the largest city in very northern Cameroon. And like I said, the borders were officially closed since 2020, but I had read on iOverlander that people were crossing there. So I didn't really think it would be a problem. Well, it turned out to be a small problem because I think it was because I was in the north and not the south. It created a bit more, um, people were more suspicious. Why is a foreigner crossing that border where, they're still having problems with like Wahhabist jihadists and like extremists? So,
You I've noticed that you're pretty ghost like on like social media and stuff. Do you think if you had like documentate like if you had like an internet presence that would have been you could have just shown them something and been like, "Look, I'm doing this."
well, I do have my polar steps, but yeah,
Oh,
like I think that probably would have helped. Like I do have my polar, so I was documenting my polar steps. Just I'm a bit more ghost-like on social media in terms of Instagram. Um, like since I'm not really traveling that much, I kind of tapered off,
got it.
taking a break. But I would post like here and there, like enough. But the polar steps is quite extensive. Like I wrote quite a bit, and I have a lot of pictures there, which comes in
Okay.
handy later.
Okay. So let's hear. Then what?
So I try to cross, and the borders are closed in Cameroon. I get stamped out of Nigeria, no problem. Then I get to what the Cameroonian side, and no one's there. The border post is closed. So I'm like, okay, what the fuck am I supposed to do now? Because I gotta get a stamp that proves that I entered the country. That can create some problems. So at the first, like, there's a checkpoint, a series of checkpoints. We get stopped, and they check my passport, and um, I offered to pay a bribe, um, because this is Africa. This is how things work. Turns out this guy is the only the moral cop one of the few moral cops that I met in Africa, and moral cops that I've met in my life, not just Africa. Um, and he was like, "No, no, no! How dare you? You know, the Congolese police and are upstanding people. we would never take a bribe like that, you know? Um, and so that just created a lot more problems. Uh, like I was like, I can, I can give, like I basically said, I can give you some food. That's what I said. And that was kind of my sly way because, the cops will always say, "Do you have anything for me?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Oh, some food, some water, I need some food or water." I'm like, "I don't have any of that." Um, no, 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 don't have anything. Um, but uh, I kind of like, I just wanted to get through. Um, and they were like, I think that created more suspicion that uh, that I instigated or I kind of started the bribing process. Um, and this kind of started this whole kind of 6 hour thing. We started at like 6 a.m. and we didn't get the go ahead to leave because we were basically at this really small police station for 4 hours. I felt really bad because there were four other people that I took the shared taxi with that had to wait. Um, and they were just like, you know, locals
Leave.
trying to live their life.
They're
So,
like, leave this guy behind.
ex- well, I was like, maybe you can go or something, and maybe the police can take me. But they said I can go, and then they said that I have to go to the central immigration office in Gorona, and that's what I did the next day because obviously I want to get this stamp. And I spend all day at the immigration office, the Bureau of Immigration there, and then they tell me because they're talking to people uh in Douala or Yaoundé, and they're like, you have to go back to the border that you crossed, and then they'll give you a stamp. So that created another problem. So the guy that was holding me at the small police station near the border actually drove me all the way back, and he gave me the stamp that I needed to. They had it in his office, and they gave it to me there. But it just turned into this whole day, 2 day fiasco. Um, and like it really was just it took so much time. Um, and at the same time, because I had my phone stolen, I had to get down to Yaoundé. I had insurance on my phone, so my dad was able to get like a replacement and sent it to Yaoundé. Um, so I was kind of in a hurry. It said that it would be there in like 2 days or something, and I just kind of wanted to pick it up because I didn't really have a cell phone. All I had was the iPad. Um, and I s- I get my butt down to Yaoundé, but the the customs basically held it for an extra 3 weeks until
Oh,
um basically I managed to meet someone who worked in customs in Yaoundé. This restaurant that I kept going to, her cousin was at the customs office, and he managed to get it released. I had to pay a bribe of it was about 50,000 sefa to the Central African francs to the head um, customs officer, him personally
what
for his signature.
what's this country again?
Cameroon.
This is
So
Cameroon.
XOF is the money
XOF. Okay, so you'd pay $80.
for his signature. That was only the signature. I had to pay more in customs, like
Um,
in
so
the import fees,
okay, so that's crazy. So $80 just for a signature
because they
in
weren't
Africa,
gonna.
especially West Africa. $80 is insane.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, it's big money. If you want to make a lot of money in Africa, be a cop because you can make so much money, just like kind of pressuring people and just kind of putting them in um, not great positions. Um,
You get your
it's
phone and then
so I get my phone, but this at this point I waited in Yaoundé for 3 whole weeks, and I had gotten my visa to the Republic of Congo, so Congo Brazzaville, uh,
yeah.
uh, about 6 weeks prior. So I spent 3 weeks in Cameroon or Nigeria, 3 weeks in
But
Cameroon.
by the way, this is unrelated to your story, but I get my Congo Brazzaville visa tomorrow. I'm pretty excited.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
We'll talk more about that uh, when we get to it. But the so I get uh, so I got it in Benin because I was like I didn't think I was going to go that relatively fast, but my phone getting stolen, and in retrospect, I should have just bought a phone there. It would have been much easier, but I just really got shafted. Um, and so I only had 3 days left on my Republic of Congo visa, and I also needed to go all the way down to Point Noir because that's where you can, at the time, you can get um, a DRC visa without an invitation letter. That they'll just give it to you, no questions asked at the time. That's no
Easier
longer the
time.
case.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I am directly responsible for that. So,
Here,
uh,
let's hear. Let's get into that.
yeah, and so I got like 3 days. Um, like basically, I go from Yaoundé all the way to Brazzaville. I managed to get uh onto a bus, and then immediately I'm on. This is like, um, it takes about to get down to Brazzaville. It took a long time. It took basically from noon, midday, all the way to 6 a.m. the next day to get to Brazzaville, or 7 a.m. So it took a while by bus, and then basically I just hopped off that bus and found another bus to go straight to Point Noir, which was another 12 hours. Um, and then that was Sunday. That was like, I think it was the 12th or the 10th, some May 10th, something like this. I forgot exactly, but that's Sunday. And the next day I go to the DRC consulate, and they're like, "What are you gonna do?" I was like, "What do you mean?" "Well, your visa is about to expire. Do you plan to go back to Brazzaville to cross, or do you plan to go to Cabinda, that part of Angola that is um that is in between the DRC, or the DRC is in between?" And I was like, "I plan to go back," and I was like, they're like, "You're not gonna make it. There's no way, bro. Like your visa's gonna expire and you're gonna have problems." So before they gave me the visa, we went to the Congo Brazzaville. Uh, uh,
So, how visa for?
which one? The DRC one, or
Yeah.
the DRC one? I was gonna get for 3 months because
Okay.
the infrastructure of the Congo, the DRC Congo, is just horrible, and it takes months to travel through the inland, and you can get it extended as well, which is another
Oh, you were
big.
planning on crossing through the DRC?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
not the like through the whole bulk of the country, like west
No.
or east, east.
So I don't know if you can pull up a map. If you look up Kisangani, um, what I was talking
But
about. So Kinshasa to
spell it for me.
Kisangani, Kisa, Ki-
Kiss
Kisgan.
to
So
Kisangani.
I was gonna take a boat there, and then continue through Goma, because yeah, but I was gonna go kind of along the Fleuve Congo, the Congo River, exactly goes through, basically follows the border between Republic of Congo and the DRC. So I would have gone up and around, not like the Google recommendation. I would have gone basically along the border of the Republic of the Congo, because that's what creates the Fleuve Congo, the Congo River creates that border.
Okay.
Um, And so that was the whole idea of my trip. I wanted to cross the Congo to get to Madagascar, to get to Tanzania. Um, and they were like, I went to the central police station in Point Noir, and they're like, "We'll give you a year visa, like a residency permit," but it was like 175,000 Central African CFA, and I was like, I don't want to pay that. Um, in retrospect, that would have been a smarter choice. Um, but it was
175,000 African. How do I spell it? Safin?
you can just say XOF.
USD. So they wanted you to pay um, almost $300.
Yeah, but this would have been for a whole year, multiple entry thing. Um,
Okay, pretty expensive.
it was basically a residency permit, and it would have been better actually for me, I think.
Okay,
Uh, for just because of what happened. Um, they and so I was like, no, I don't want to pay that. Screw that. I go back to the embassy. I was like, okay, let me try this other thing. He knows a guy at the Point Noir airport who gives me a transit visa for 25,000 SEFA. Um, and so I get a 3-day extension basically. I just get a transit visa at the airport. Um, and then finally they give me the visa for um, the Congo um, after I was able to get the extension. Um, and I paid 250,000 SEFA for the DRC visa for 3 months,
so like $350.
something like that. Yeah, for 3 months.
Okay,
Um, and then the next day, I go back to Brazzaville, the city, stay there one night, and then I immediately just cross into Kinshasa, and that's
so
on May.
Brazzaville is in the Republic of Congo, not the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Exactly, but they are so close you can see each other. They are the
Okay,
it's just it's just the Fleur of Congo. The Congo River separates them. You can see the
okay,
other Congo from each other. Um,
okay.
and um, I cross, no problem. This is May 15th, and basically I hit the ground running trying to find a boat because the trying to find a boat to Kisangani is quite an undertaking. Like doing anything in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is an undertaking, as you are finding out yourself. Um, the it's not, yeah, it's not it's not Thailand, you know, or it's not even Morocco or some of these other what seems complicated um, countries. The Congo is a whole different animal, and basically the port of Kinshasa is kilometers long. It's massive, and basically I read two different trip reports of two travelers going inland the interior of the Congo, of the DRC. Only two since like basically the 1970s. Um, and one did take a boat, but it was this one a Serbian guy and a Peruvian girl. Um, I messaged the Serbian guy. They did it as a couple and they managed to find a boat and they went all the way to Goma in 2022. And he was basically just like, yeah, we just went to the ports every day, different parts of the port, just talking to people, just seeing what was possible. And I was only in Kinshasa for a total of 5 days. And that's just basically what I would do. I would just go to a different part of the port and I would go on my maps.me and mark that I already visited that part because it's so big and there's no like markings, it's just it's absolute chaos. There is no direction. And like I said, only two travelers had tried this. Um, Actually, a third one I did find out afterwards had done it recently, um, but I didn't find out until after the whole nightmare ended. Um, and so I just kept doing that for about 5 days, 5 days, 5 days, and I think it was on the Saturday or the Sunday. So this is like I think this is about May 19th, something like that, of
20
2024.
2024?
2024. Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
like 7.
yeah, it was about 7 months ago, something like that. Um,
Okay.
I I I DM'd this guy, because I saw that uh he was posting about that he was in Kinshasa on Instagram somehow. It came up on my feed, and I just DM'd him like he was trying to cross the Congo, but he was also a walker like you, but he came down the other way. Um, but I was just like looking for any information if he knew anything, because it's just like the more people you talk to, the better, the more
Yeah.
possibility to find something. And we talked a bit, but basically he invited me to go out for a drink at a bar in Gombe. Gombe is the part of Kinshasa that's where all the expats live. It's where the
Okay.
embassies are, the fancy part. Um,
And
so there's like
we didn't
higher end.
I didn't bring this up earlier, but for the Americans listening, Kinshasa is in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
so, what's the
oh,
walker's
the,
name?
the walker's name is Charlie Christensen. He has
Oh,
a NGO called Walk for Water, and so
okay.
his whole thing is he just like builds bullholes, and he's been walking from Denmark to what is now Kinshasa since 2015. It got split up because some other things happened to him.
I was like,
Uh,
that's like 10 years. He hasn't been walking very fast.
no, no, no. But like he told me the first stint was like 2015 to 2019. Then he restarted in 2022 from um, uh, Cameroon, and then I think he told me he'll start in April this year, upcoming April again, because it's the dry season in the Congo. So it'll be
Okay.
more.
You're in Kinshasa.
Yeah, he's gonna restart again.
Okay.
Um, and but so yeah, Charlie gave me a bunch of information, and there was another guy there who was living there. He had a Congolese girlfriend. He had been there for about 2 years at the bar with us, and he kind of told me you can go to this place called Kinkole. Kinkole was the um uh Kinkole was the It's about 45 minutes away from the city of Kinshasa. It's near the international airport, so it's just 45 minutes to an hour east. And he told me that I could find a pretty solid boat because that's where they transport wood up the river. There's a lot of Chinese who are illegally exporting wood, apparently. Um, So that's where they do it from, and you can get some pretty quality boats. Because part of the problem is you have to find a boat that is actually safe, that is not going to sink. Because that's that was another layer of this difficulty. You have to find a boat that is actually not going to fall apart on you. Kinkole is Kinkole. If you're looking.
Okay.
Uh, and so that was the most solid lead that I got so far. And May 21st, 2024, I order a Yango, which is basically like a Uber you can get all over West Africa, including Kinshasa. And this Yango driver takes me there, and I just see on Maps.me that there's like a port icon. So I was like, I'll just go there, and then I'll just see what's happening. And I get um, then uh, I talk with the Yango driver. I'm like, because he said he'll wait for me and then he'll take me back to the apartment that I rented in Gombe. Um, and I was like, okay, that sounds good. Because I wasn't gonna stay that long. I was literally just gonna try and talk to people. Um, and so that's what I did. I got out and I started walking towards the icon on my phone. And eventually, I kind of saw these group of people, and I'm a bit anxious sometimes, but I was um, like I had enough courage to go up and talk to them, and I was like, "Hey, how are you guys? I'm looking for a boat to Kisangani. Do you guys know where I can find like transport or like if there's like a company or business that is going upriver?" They told me in that direction. But in the middle of this conversation, someone from the Congolese military comes in, uh, comes up to me, and he's like, "Hello, how are you? Good, good, good. What are you doing here?" I was like, "I'm looking for a boat to Kisangani. They told me to go over there." He's like, "Okay, come with me." And obviously, I'm not. I'm just following the request of um the police officer or the guy in the military fatigues. And this place is where they transport wood, so everything's made out of wood. They have this wooden shack that they put me in with a table and a chair. And I thought like, I don't know, they were just gonna check my passport and check my visa and then let me go, because during all my travels, that has happened like a million times, no problem. So I didn't really think anything of it, you know? And so I was cool, calm, collected, had no reason to worry, at least so I thought. And then that's where I noticed that it's taking a long time. So I'm like kind of somewhat worried, and people are starting to actually surround the wooden hut, and like people are like I speak French almost fluently. So um like I understood like what people were telling and saying in French, but I didn't understand any of the Lingala. That's the local language of the DRC, the Kinshasa part actually. Um, and so people were saying, like Nick Tamea, like basically like fuck you, and um, it was definitely like a tense and hostile situation. Like everything was fine until the police got involved or the military got involved, and then everything started to get more intense. I was really freaking out a bit now, just like everything. I was in this room and I felt a bit claustrophobic almost. And then they more and more military come, and people are asking me all these questions. This guy is trying to talk to me in English, and he's like, "Are you a soldier? Are you a soldier?" I was like, "No, I'm just a tourist. I'm just looking for a boat, looking for a boat." Um, and you know, it's just a very intense situation. Then somebody in plain clothes who's wearing just like a t-shirt and jeans comes and talks to me, and he's like, "Come here, give me your stuff." And they turn off my phone, they take my bags, and they're like, "Follow me, and if you do not follow my orders, you could die." So like they had like that's when I knew everything was fucked, because they had all these guys in the military, like they had guns trained on me. There were like probably 5 or 6 of them. Um, that and as I walk out, someone hit me with their shoe. Everybody is cheering, like the local people. So like I don't really understand what's going on exactly. Like, um, I'm just like, I don't know why this is happening, um, but I'm freaking out right now. Um, as I was in the room with the police officer, like in the shack before they took me out, I wrote like a message to an email to the U.S. Embassy, like, "I think I'm being arrested." It, but I didn't press send because I thought it would be okay. In retrospect, I should have. That would have made a lot of things a lot better, and a lot things would have got a lot more smoothly. And then I get dragged out because um, the way that they do it is they like flip their hands into your waistband, and then they basically drag you. That's what they do when they arrest people. And they put me on the back of a motorbike with another guy, and he puts my hands behind my back, and then they interlock his hands to, I guess, mimic like handcuffs. They didn't have any. Um, and now I'm like, holy fuck. They take me off of the the motorbike and put me into a car. Um, they stuff me in there with like 4 or 5 guys in the back of this sedan, so it's not very comfortable. But we basically go to this military base in Kinkole, and uh, they like the situation is super tense. Like there's a guy there who's basically calling me like an asshole and says that you're gonna die in French. Um, you know, it's pretty like as I'm going what's going through my head right now, I was thinking of, do you know who Michael Rockefeller is? So Michael Rockefeller was the son of Nelson Rockefeller, who was the Secretary of State of Richard Nixon, and he went to Papua New Guinea or West Papua, the Dutch Indonesia, somewhere in the western part of Indonesia, um, on I guess like a cultural tourist exchange. I think he was a photographer. He was doing some sort of arts, but the story goes is that he died there, and they ate him. The local people ate him. So, um, in my head, I was thinking that they were just gonna like execute me there because where they took me was in the middle of nowhere, this military base. So they easily could have just executed me and dumped me in the Congo River, and nobody would have known who I was, known what happened to me. You know, um, I was pretty scared, particularly like in that moment. I just, the worst possible. Like I suffer from anxiety and depression, so my anxiety was like through the roof. You know, just like my head goes to the worst possible situation, and I was like, "Fuck, fuck, fuck! This is the end." Um, but they take me to this room and they um, interrogate me. There's just like a bunch of these guys in military fatigues, and he's asking me these questions in French. He's like, "What's your name? Why are you here? How long have you been here?" Very basic questions. Now, uh, I am like, I give them all that, and they're like, "Where are you staying?" I said, "Gombe," and I didn't know the name of the building. I mispronounced it. It's a very famous building. A lot of people live there, but um, I was like mispronouncing it, so they thought I was lying. And then they're like, "Are you a soldier? Are you a soldier?" I was like, "No, no, no. I have cerebral palsy on the left side of my body, so like I don't I couldn't be a soldier anyway. Um, my disability, I guess, wouldn't allow me to be a soldier. And I don't play up my disability, but in that moment, I did. Like I was like, you
Play that.
know, you gotta be, you gotta use what you have to your advantage. And uh, like, I'm like just, I'm just trying to get through this really tense interview. Like, there's a bunch of guys with like their hands on their guns. I feel like they could still execute me if they wanted to. Um, and they ask me like, uh, they don't ask me about um the coup d'état at all. So the coup d'état that happened on May 19th, I wouldn't say it was a coup d'état personally, but there was on May 19th, 2024, three Americans and about 40 or 37 other guys were like attacked basically what is the White House or Buckingham Palace, and some of them had American passports. And I only really knew about it because I read some reports after it happened on Al Jazeera. And then I was like, okay, I'm never gonna think about this again. I didn't really give a shit. I was just like, all right, this happened. That's over. And they didn't ask me about it. I didn't, because I didn't really know anything about it. Anyway, I just knew that it happened, and the streets of Gombe were shut down for a few days. You know, um, and I just was like, basically that interview ended, and honestly, I thought, like maybe I was naive, but I was like, okay, they're just gonna figure out that I have a valid visa. I'm a tourist. Everything will be fine. Was not fine. They wait till nightfall. This happened like at 1 p.m. This interview, and I got to King Kole at like 11 a.m. And it wasn't until nightfall where they transport me to this place called Camp Kachech. Uh, Camp Kachech is a hospital, but also a military base for the Garde Républicaine du Démocratique République du Congo, or it's the Guard in English, the Republican Guard, which the Republican Guard is a French, basically secret service. So it's a small, it's a part of the. They have them all throughout Francophone Africa. Each country has them, but if you're part of the Guard Republican or the Republican Guard, and if you're a French Guard Republican, your job is to protect Macron. Um, that is like it's part of the military that is specifically there to guard the president. Um, and so I was arrested by them. I did not learn that until afterwards, until later. But they take me to this place called Camp Kachech. You can find it on Google. It's called Prison Souterrain, which is like prison underground on Google. Um, and when I crossed the gates through there, I realized, oh shit, I'm not going home today. You know, this is not over yet. Um, they bring me to Camp Kachech with two other guys that they had arrested in King Kole, and uh, they set us on the ground. They take our shoes. That's the first thing that they did, because that's how they indicate in Congolese jails that you're a prisoner. You don't have shoes. Um, and I never saw those shoes again. Uh, I like if you have money, you can buy slippers or like sandals, which um, is kind of a big. It's good for sanitary reasons. Um, but they have us sit on the ground, and I'm just kind of sitting there in the dark, and someone keeps talking to me, and he's like, Mondele, what are you doing there? Mondele is Lingala for white guy, for white. And I didn't know that. I was like, I told them in French, like, my name isn't Mondele. I don't know who you think I am. I thought that was like a name. I was like, I'm not Mondele. Um, and I'm like, I'm just a tourist. I don't know why I'm here. We basically wait like 20 minutes for the chief of Camp Kachech to come, and I'm taken to his office, and he's like, uh, I'm, uh, I'm a tourist. I don't know why I'm here. He's like, "Well, we'll figure that out. It's really bad that you decided to come, particularly during this time." And I was like, wasn't really. He was referring to the coup d'état, but I didn't really know that. And he's like, "Well, we'll figure out everything later." And then it's like, did you report that you came to the DRC to your embassy? And I was like, No, I had never done that in any country that I visited. Been to 85 countries. I had never reported myself to the US Embassy ever because
Same.
yeah, it's not mandatory. Um, and so I was like, no. And he's like, oh, that's very bad. That's very bad. We'll figure it out later. Um, they put me in a different building with this colonel, and they have someone standing outside all night. And they gave me some food. I didn't eat all day. I was they they didn't give me anything at the first military base in Kinkole. Even though I asked for at least water, but they were like, no, 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 just wait. That was just like the whole basically 6 hours I was there. I finally got to eat something. It was just like powdered oatmeal, but it was something. And they gave me like a thin mat to sleep on and like a small sheet. And I tried to sleep through the night, but obviously my anxiety was through the roof. I just couldn't sleep at all. So many different thoughts rushing through my head. and also I was so anxious I couldn't poop or pee. Like, I couldn't get it out. Like, I had to go, but, like, I don't know, like, it was a mental block, like, that's how bad my anxiety was. Um, which, it like, basically the whole time that I was imprisoned, the quality like, I was constipated the whole time, which to the point where it affected my sleep later down the line. Um, it got so bad, um, but I'll get to that later. And so then the following morning, this guy named the director of the cast show comes, introduces himself, smiling, very polite. Um, so I'm like the same. I'm like, I'm ready to go home. I'm just hoping that this will just end. You know, and they it did not unfold that way. I was put into the actual casho now. Casho is a word in French. It's a bit older word. I see it in French literature a lot, like older French literature that I've read. But it literally translates to dungeon, but it's literally just jail. So if you ever hear the word casho, it's a place you don't want to be during your trip. Um, Best to try to avoid. Um, and so I'm put in this cell. It's about 2 meters by a meter and a half. Um, it's blue, like this teal bluish turquoise-ish color, and I'm sitting there and I meet these three guys who were already in the cell. Um, there was two commanders of the Guard Republican who were arrested, and then there was one civilian. There was Commander Jolie, Commander Fatilla, and then this guy named Poncif, and he was a civilian. And they kind of like introduced themselves. Fatula was very intense, like he didn't say a lot, but he was like in my face, and he was like doing this, like I'm gonna kill you and stuff. I'd never been arrested before in my life, so my only point of reference was like movies and TV, like Shawshank Redemption and stuff. So I was like, oh fuck, I gotta like fight or something, to like protect myself. That's what I thought I had to do. So I was like mentally, even though I hadn't worked out in like a year because I wasn't that, because I was so weak at the time. I was like, I just gotta at least try to get through this, you know? So I was ready to like fight this guy, but turns out he was just messing with me, just like fucking with me. Like it was not, um, he was just being very hyperbolic, and he was very nice to me afterwards. But like, I was just like, I'm in this place. This is horrible. Um, and during the day, it was okay for the first day. Because there was where it's positioned, the sun was coming in the afternoon, so I was getting a bit of sunlight, but the bars limited how much sun came in. Um, that first day, I had my first interrogation with the OPJ, which is like just the lead French for lead investigator, and that's where they're interrogating me. The thing about Camp Ketchum, it's kind of the equivalent of like a CIA black site, kind of a Guantanamo Bay situation. So you don't have access to a lawyer, you don't have a right to call any of your family, you don't exist here. You know, there was a guy named Wiseau. He put something on social media about the president, and he said, um, if the president doesn't step down in the next 72 hours, uh, we're we're gonna do a coup d'état or something. And they picked him up and put him in there, and he was in there for 10 months by the time that I left. He the thing about Camp Ketchum, the Cacho that I was in, there's two levels. Since since I was a foreigner and also the color of my skin, I think really helped white privilege. They put me in a cell because it's not like a prison. It's just like none of the guards are inside. It's ran by the prisoners, itself. So you just find a place on the floor and that's it. You know, like there were at most 120 people in there were a total of 10 cells, but people were just laying on the floor everywhere. It's just like you just find a spot and that's your spot and you're not really allowed to leave. You stay in your place. And the president and what is called the Commander Pem or Commander Police Militaire, the military police. He's kind of the enforcer. I've seen him, the Commander Setfest. He was the Commander Pem for the majority of the time that I was there. I saw him slap the shit out of some people, like if they were out of line, you know, like really, really hard, or like punch people. You know, um, generally there was no violence, but he was the one that would keep people in line. And uh, so like I'm in this jail cell, but then they take me out soon after. Like I said, to go back, I was interviewed by the OPJ. They interview me for the first time. They ask me a lot of the same questions. Why do you come to Congo? How long have you been here? Etc. Etc. Um, where were you staying? What were you doing? Um, and it was just kind of a repeat. They're like, "Did you report yourself to the embassy?" And I was like, "No, because it's not necessary." And that was the first interrogation, and they they kind of pushed it, and then they just wrote everything down by hand, all the questions and my answers, and they actually doctored the answers, changed them to make them more on their, I guess, make them more seem more incriminating. I didn't. They didn't let me read it or anything. They just had me sign it. Uh, you know, I had never really done an interrogation like this. I didn't really know what the process was, what I should have been asking, because I had never been arrested. I had never been investigated for a crime even in the US before, so this was all new to me. So I just signed it, put me back in my cell, and that night, when night fell, it really set in that I was in jail because there's only three lights in the entire castle. A little bit of light came into my cell, so he kept the door open, which was nice, but, it's, like, very dark in there. I wasn't in the bottom in the basement because in the basement, there's absolutely no light. Everyone just has torches, like flashlights. There's little slits during the day in the cells, but, like, if you are down there, it's complete darkness, and so that's where I kind of, broke down and cried. Because I was like, "Holy fuck, I'm in a foreign country and I speak the second language," and I was coming to terms with, like, I have no idea what is gonna happen. I can't contact my family. I don't I just have no idea. I was just hoping that things would end soon, you know? Um, Pontiff was the guy who kinda stuck with me, who was basically the guy I talked to the most, and he was very religious. I'm not very religious. I had a religious education, but my parents were very secular. So they were like, "Well, like, what are your like? Do you have a relationship with God and all this stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know how to pray." And I was raised like I went to Catholic school, but I am not really a practicing Christian. But it was like, you know, it's like maybe, you should try to open a door with God again. And there were two pastors because each night there would be a prayer service. It would kind of be like a Pentecostal service because the Pentecostals are the ones that they have the snakes and everything, and they're like praying that they do the crazy they put the hand on the head like this, and they're like, please Jesus, save him," and they're singing the very intense stuff. You see that a lot in like the southern US. And they uh So they would do that every night. And one of the two pastors, the military pastor and the civilian pastor, the military pastor came in and like kind of did like a prayer for me, like which honestly was quite comforting. You know, just all things considered. It's I mean it wasn't super comforting, but it was something, you know, and it was something that helped, I guess. Um, but basically, I was in that cell for 7 weeks. I did not leave that cell for 7 weeks, and I was not allowed to leave that cell for 7 weeks. Um, I was allowed to go into the corridor and like socialize a bit, but even then it was quite limited. Like I was on special, I had special rules set on me and special restrictions, I guess I would say, where other people were not allowed to talk to me because they just did not want me interacting with others. Because I would try to go to the mass that was happening in the main hall that was next to the cell, but I was not allowed to participate. The chief of Camp Kachet personally said that I was not allowed to, and I had to stay in that cell to the point where and I was the only person not allowed to do so. I could not walk throughout the cash show. I had to stay there because I would talk to this Kenyan guy who was there, and his situation was pretty fucked as well. Basically, he was an insurance adjuster, and he, uh, the Guard Republican arrested him about a month prior, 45 days before I came in, and the President Fatsi, the president of the Congo, his bodyguard was killed on a Wednesday, and that next Friday, the Joseph, Michael Kiyoko, and about 9 other people were watching a football match, the same place that he was, but 2 days afterwards, and they just rounded up people who were in the parking lot that had nothing to do the, um, uh, with the murder of the president's bodyguard. And, as we're talking, I haven't heard from Joseph. I don't know, it seems like he could be still in jail, I'm not sure. Um, because obviously this is a special, like, black site, nobody exists. You don't have any access to the outside world. Like cell phones are not allowed in this jail.
So
Um,
you there for 7 weeks. What happened? Like what? How come you're not still there? Is my question.
yes. So I'm not still there because Pontiff, um, he knew that he was gonna get out soon. I don't know exactly what he was being accused of. I didn't really ask. I didn't really bring it. He was the only person that I was allowed to talk to, and writing was illegal. Like no pens, no paper was allowed inside, because they didn't want anybody communicating whatsoever um, outside of the jail. But people were able to get pens in, and we wrote on the back of like a piece of cardboard the number of my father and his name. Luckily, my dad's had the same phone number since I was 7, so it's been ingrained in my brain. Um, and it was like one of the only things I remember my mom's number and my dad's number, and that helped a lot because I was able to give it to him. Ponsif was released June 27th. So I've been there for over a month. Um, and Ponsif gets released, and I was like, I gave him my dad's number again that day, and now I'm just uh, now it's just a waiting game. Hopefully, I have no idea what's gonna happen, but I'm just hoping that he gets the name, he gets the information out there, or just so that even if they can't find me, they know that I'm alive. You know, because at this
Yeah.
point, my dad, nobody knows. Um, my phone's been off for 7 weeks because I used the polar steps to track my exact route, my GPS coordinates. So my dad knew pretty much instantly when it stopped uh, tracking me that something was wrong, because I wouldn't have gone offline just like that. Um, I would have given him a heads up that I was going to do something. And then I proceed to, uh, we wait, and June 30th is the Day of Independence for the Republic of Congo for against the Belgians, and on July 1st, um, General Lieutenant General Kabi, he is the highest ranking member of the God Republican, comes. This is something that people would do all the time. They would talk about clemency or like this. He would come in and he was the one that could let go, release the soldiers. He was the only person that could actually release the soldiers. So the soldiers were waiting for, some of them were waiting for 3 months to be released. Um, the chief could release the civilians, but only the general could release the the soldiers, because it was like 50% soldiers, 50% civilians in the Castro. Um, and he comes, everyone's cheering, and everyone is trying to get outside because they're basically having like a public audience. There's also two other Castros within Camp Kachech. There is a women's Castro and then another men's Castro. So they have everyone come in front of ours, and that's where they have everybody sit down on the steps, and they're just waiting for their explain their situation, why they're there, how long they've been there, and you know, basically it was me and Joseph's group, the 13, 11 people that were not allowed to go outside. We were not allowed to have like our, I guess, day in court or have our opportunities to speak. They said, no, 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 you have to stay. Um, but we did, like everybody was pressed against the door trying to get out. Um, and what I did, I was standing on my tippy toes, trying to be seen, just so that the guy could see me. I don't know, maybe something could happen, you know? Um, and like Joseph actually, he was only like 5'3" or something, uh, like 150 pounds, very small guy. So when they opened the door to let someone back in, he actually snuck out. Uh, and so he did get to go out and talk to them because he spoke Swahili, and Swahili is spoken in the eastern part of the Congo. So he was able. Most of the soldiers speak Swahili because that's where a lot of the most of the conflict is going, is currently going on. So all the soldiers have some basic knowledge of Swahili. Um, and so he was able to go out, and the uh, General Kabi, Lieutenant General Kabi said that we just have to finalize your paperwork and we'll let you go soon. Um, you know, these guys, the director, who was the first guy who brought me into the cash show, he would also come in regularly and check on all um the prisoners, and he would habitually lie. He would just say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we'll check on Monday," because obviously they knew Joseph was had nothing to do with any of this, and they knew that like I would say the majority of the civilians prob were most likely innocent. I know everybody says that in jail, but in this situation, I would say it was true. Um, and the OPJ of their case said that they were innocent, but they chose to keep them there for whatever reason. Um, and you know, uh, obviously, it's a rough day because almost the whole cash show cleared out. You know, it was packed to the rim with 120 people who were literally sleeping like body to body because this is like a small house. It's the one level, and then there's the bottom. There's the basement. So there's not a, a lot of space, but it just felt empty. It was weird. It was like I felt like I was in a hostel and that all my friends had left. But it was just like the shittiest hostel I ever stayed in. um, and so apparently the general did see me when I was on my tippy toes. This guy named Ranta was translating in Lingala for me. He could hear what they were saying outside, and someone else corroborated that they're like, "What's Mandela doing there? What's the white guy doing there? Finish his case, like do whatever you have to do, like get him processed." Um, and later that day, because the director comes back in to check how many people to do like roll call to see who's left, and he comes back to my cell and he's like, "The general saw you, and I think you're gonna be released like in 48 hours, it seems like." So I was riding high, I was like, "Fuck, this shit's gonna be over. Fuck yeah," you know. Um, but anticipation is a killer, and the next 48 hours felt way longer than the previous 7 weeks, um, or 6 weeks it was. Um, and so July 3rd rolls around, the Wednesday, July 3rd. That Wednesday does come, and they tell me, okay, uh, they they say that we need to interrogate you for some follow-up questions. Um, their main thing was now they actually do ask me about the coup d'etat. So like, how did you know about the coup d'etat? And I said that I uh, just knew about it uh, in the cash show, which technically wasn't true. I don't know why I said that. It wasn't true. I found that it was from the Instagram post on Al Jazeera, but I just said that anyway. And then the other thing was, um, how did you have a guide to take you through to go to Kisangani? And I said no, because it wasn't necessary, and I knew it wasn't necessary because regulation doesn't exist in the Congo. So a tourist guide there. It was like how they said that you needed to report yourself to the co- uh, report yourself to the U.S. embassy. They were just making stuff up, and that took about like 30 minutes or whatever. And then I finally meet the U.S. Consular Service. I'm in the This is the first time in 7 weeks that I'm outside of my cell because I've been isolated. I meet the U.S. Consular Service, and there's an FBI agent as well, and then there's another Congolese guy who works with the U.S. Embassy. So there were three representatives, and then there's the chief, his second in command, and then they have an English translator for the chief. And the woman, she tells me, "Hi, how are you? Like, how have you been, etc." Like asking me about the conditions, and they had me sign a form because in these situations, the U.S. Embassy doesn't have a right to give any information to your family unless you have a written, like unless you give them permission to to talk about your case.
A,
But the thing was, oh, what?
a consent form.
Exactly, a consent form, and but the thing was, they couldn't find me for 7 weeks. They didn't know where I was. They couldn't find, like, it was a kind of paradox that they couldn't find me, but they needed the permission form. So it took, I signed that, and they're just asking me about the conditions of the cash show. I tell them how horrible it is, and I basically asked the FBI agent, like, "Am I going to jail?" And he's like, "Well, we honestly only just found you a couple days ago, so we don't really know what's going on either. We're trying to figure that out. We're here." Um, and he's like, "How's your mental state?" And I was like, "It's down in the dumps. It's pretty horrible, like I was I had my hope was pretty limited, I was trying to keep the faith, but you just there's no hearings or anything. They just keep you until they want to." Um, and the FBI agent was like, "Well, we're here now. We know where you are, and like I think you will see things slowly improve. I think you will. You just gotta you just gotta take it day by day." And in that moment, it was kind of hard to believe him, but
I,
considering, yeah, and but like he was just like, I think like they just gotta realize that you're just a tourist, and eventually they'll let you go. Um, and that was kind of the the only other thing from the first meeting is that because they explained why they arrested me, and the chief said that they were actually protecting me in King Kole, uh, which wasn't true because everything in King Kole was fine until the Guard Republican got involved. Like I was totally fine. Nobody was threatening me. People were very nice, like most Congolese are. Um, it, the only thing I really said in that meeting to the chief, I said, "Je suis pas d'accord. I do not agree." And then he's like, "What?" He wasn't really looking at me at all. Like he didn't give me the like any sort of respect. He didn't even look in my general direction. He was only talking to the U.S. Embassy representatives, and uh, like I just shut my mouth because he was trying. It was certainly intimidating the way that he would switch from being nice to the U.S. Embassy representative than like trying to intimidate me. And he said that they will bring me in front of the military court. That's they're going to have an investigation, and they will try me in front of the military court. Um, the embassy staff said that my father hired a lawyer, and then we proceed to. They were like, "What do you need?" Because they got my stuff from where I rented an apartment. Um, and I was just like, "I just want chocolates," and then they got some books for me, uh, which is kind of nice. Um, they come back 2 days later, that Friday. We have another meeting. The translator and the second in command is there, but not the chief, and they're just like, so they told us that they'll transfer you next Tuesday. So this is um, July 5th, Friday, July 5th, and then they'll transfer you like the 9th, July 9th, to Gombe and to the kind of the military justice. And I was like, okay. So it was just very quick. They gave me my stuff, and then uh, since I knew I was going in front of the military justice, I got a haircut. I got a nice military high-end tights, basically kind of similar to what I got now, but just like they shaved everything off completely, basically, because the guy was like military haircuts only. Um, and Tuesday rolls around, and they say, "Okay, we need to interview you a third time." I thought it would be like some sort of exit interview, something like that. They proceed to basically ask me the same questions that they did the first day. Um, like the main difference was is that they talked about the guide again, and they actually asked me if I was part of the coup d'état. Um, I would have these long, and I just obviously said no. Um, and I was a bit confused because I told the U.S. Embassy that I would be transferred that day, but now that I'm going back into the cash show, I'm like now I'm confused. Now my hope is I'm like, okay, I don't know what's happening now. My anxiety is kind of exacerbated again because at least I had Tuesday to look forward to. Like that's kind of how I was getting through it. Like at least I can look forward to the next step in this. Um, but they the next day I do get transported. This is July 10th, 2024. I get transported to the military justice in Gombe, and they kind of check me in, put my stuff there. Like I have my bag that I was arrested with, and then that's in the administration building, and then there's two buildings, and then they bring you to the cash out part, and this cash out, holy Toledo, it's way worse than the first one. The I was a bit anxious to go to the next cash out because I there's a there's a quote in Albert Camus' The Stranger. It's uh uh you you can really get used to anything, and it's about when his character was actually in jail for murdering that guy on the beach, and he kind of got used to being in jail, and it was kind of the same thing for me. I just kind of got Used to being in jail, got I was used to that surrounding. So I was quite, even though it was so bad, I was, it was still just the fear of the unknown, you could say. And so this next castle, the it's still the same setup. There's the president, the commander PEMs, the enforcers, and I go inside with my bags, with my books and my clothes, and the first thing he says to me, "Bienvenue au Zaire." Welcome to Zaire. Zaire is the former name of the DRC when Mobutu was the dictator for 30 years. And so they refer to the cachos as Zaire because the conditions are so horrible. This was much worse. They they check your clothes to see if you have any weapons, and then there's always like an initiation, like a punishment. In Catch, they make you shower, and then they put you in the basement. I didn't do that because I got special privileges, but this one I had to do the punishment, which was they called it the Lumumba. It's named after Patrice Lumumba, the Pan African leader who was the first president, democratically elected president of the Congo after the Belgians left. And he does this like has his fist up like this, really high, and then his right hand up and his left hand down. And they made me do that for like 5 minutes. And as I do that, I'm looking out into the abyss of this casho. There's It's just one large room with about 50 to 70 guys stacked on top of each other, like like your knees are up, like you're sitting down on the ground, and then there's someone sitting in your like basically up against your chest or your crotch, um, and it's just rows of people. Um, and there was only one single light under, but it didn't extend that far, so you couldn't really see how far it went. It was just like this really dark, smelly room where you know, people would be there for weeks where they just did not move for weeks because you're just not allowed to leave. And there's no windows. It's just the one doorway. Um, and you just find a space on the floor. I found some guy I sat next to named Julian. He helped me out and he gave me a nicer spot because it was closer to the door, so there was a little bit of fresh air. Then, uh, so basically, like at this point, I'm just like, you just have to deal with it. Um, the the capitan, which is it's only a position in the jail. It's a higher ranking position, and he was the one doing the roll calls. His name was Jonas, and we spoke briefly. And in this jail, in the Gombe, people have cell phones, so you can contact people outside. That's the difference, because it was basically by the Camp Ketchum is like their CIA equivalent jails. So this one, there's a bit more freedom. And the next day, because no one came to see me that first day, that Wednesday, so I had a number of a guy who was in jail with me in Camp Ketchum, and I tried to call him, but the number didn't work. And I think Jonas felt a bit bad for me. So he gave me some food, which was the first thing that I ate in like 48 hours. I didn't eat because I didn't have any money, so I couldn't eat anything. My meals were provided by the pe- the chief at Camp Ketchach. I would eat like once a day, regularly at least. Um, but I didn't eat for like 48 hours, and he shared his meal with me. It was some fufu. That's the cassava. You'll eat. You might have. You're in Angola, right? Have you eaten that yet?
Yeah, yeah. It's in Namibia it's mahangu pop. Here it's fungi. It's like the same.
Yeah, yeah. It's the cassava, and it was something. I ate it basically every day in the jail. Um, I was thinking about opening a restaurant called the Casho, and it was just like it would be like Congolese food, and it's only fufu, and you sit on the floor, and it's dimly lit. That was just an idea that I had as a potential. business idea, inspired by my experience. Um, and so he felt bad for me, and so he ate with me, and we talked a lot, and he um, I'm vegetarian, so I just only tried to eat the um, cassava, and but I tried to not say that I was vegetarian because I wasn't trying to be rude, because he was helping me out by giving me food. But then, so then the second um, night comes, and during the prayer service at this casho, Jonas calls me over, and there's a guard outside, and he's Jonas says, "Tell him your situation," and then I say, "I haven't had contact with my family. I'm quite desperate. Nobody knows where I am." And this guard decides to help me. Um, and I give him my dad's phone number, and I call him on WhatsApp. He doesn't respond, but then he recalls like 2 minutes later, and it's the first time in 7 weeks that I get to talk to my dad. It was a pretty emotional, uh, like it was a lot to take in, because I was like, oh, holy shit! Finally, I get to hear my dad's voice again, and at least he knows that I'm alive. You know, it 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 was a lot, and it was very brief. I just told him where I was so that he can tell the U.S. Embassy, because my dad really couldn't do anything personally. So it was more important that the U.S. Embassy was there, kind of putting pressure on them. And then they proceed to. Um, it was just a very brief conversation, uh, and everything just felt so much better, even though I was in such a horrible place. Just to hear my dad's voice again, it was quite grounding emotionally. It was great. And then the next day, the U.S. Embassy comes. We have a meeting with the Lieutenant General Lucian Lukilia Bakumi. He is the head of the military justice of the RDC, or the DRC, and he, with one of his advisors, and then the same three people that were at Camp Ketchach, we kind of have this kind of brief meeting where um, the we talk about, like, what's the next course of action, how is this going to go, and he was very aggressive, very, like, trying to be intimidating the general, and he was like basically yelling, it's like, we're going to do the same thing with the Malanga case, we're going to throw them, we're going to have an investigation, then we're going to have a trial. Um, and then he kind of asked me some questions like, why did you want to go to Kisangani? And the FBI agent chimes in and is like, "Well, I think for Quinn it was kind of a challenge," and I agreed. But because the FBI agent was the one who answered on my behalf, um, it kind of he was like, "Well, I'm not going to accept that answer because it didn't come out of his mouth." It was very, very tense. I just thought that they were just going to uh, throw me in jail with all these guys. And as this is all happening, they're the guys who did the coup d'état, or the hit on the finance minister, um, they were already being tried. There was already a trial. Like, basically the whole time I was in Camp Ketchach, starting July or June 7th. So basically 2 weeks after I had been arrested, they were being tried. Begs the question, why, if I was part of it, why was I not also in that group? You know?
Yeah,
And so they proceed to uh, uh, the counselor woman asked if I could talk to my dad, because the call the previous night with the guard was clandestine, was not allowed. If he gets caught, then he's gonna be in the castle with me, and I don't want that because he did me a huge solid. So he said, you have to wait for the lawyer to come, this lawyer that my father hired, and the lawyer eventually does come. They call him. He was like 5 minutes late, and they call him on the lawyer's phone. They said the general Bakumi said that that's necessary. No one else's phone, because he was very like paranoid about everything. So this lawyer is the only person that can call him. Um, they proceed to call my dad, and it's a very just quick conversation. And they have the guy, one of the Congolese guy working with the U.S. Embassy, talking with him, or translating what me and my dad are saying in English. And the one thing that he didn't translate is that he says that this lawyer is trying to extort me for $40,000. This this lawyer that my dad hired, he had already paid him $6,500 to find me and represent me if necessary. But what I was unaware of is that he knew, because I gave Ponsif's number to my dad's number to Ponsif. My dad didn't really understand because he tried to use Google Translate and it didn't really come out well from French to English for some reason. And my dad passed the number along to this lawyer, and that's how that they were able to. According to the lawyer, that's how they found me. Apparently, he put a Apple AirTag inside of this tub of ice cream and had Poncif give it to one of the soldiers, because the soldiers in Camp Ketchach can actually go outside, because if they just have to sleep in the casho, they can be outside of it. The civilians can't, because the way that they tether them to the casho is if they leave, then they don't get their salary. They don't get paid, and because it's
Hmm.
a direct deposit to their family, so they'll just cut the money off if they leave the casho. And so, according to the lawyer, they had the proof that I was there. They sent a message to my father about the Geo AirTag, but they wouldn't actually show where the Geo AirTag was, just kind of the information of the Geo AirTag. And the last time the Geo AirTag was registered was 2 days prior, 2 days after it was sent to my father, because my dad saved all the chat logs and everything. So I got to read it all afterwards. And apparently, um, the lawyer was a very powerful guy. He knew a lot of people, including the Lieutenant General Bakumi, Lukilia Bakumi, who was holding me. They had a personal relationship prior, and what it seemed like is that I was being held and my father being held for ransom for money by the. This is my personal opinion. This is obviously what I think and what seemed to go down, because my father spoke with a representative with the United Nations, who dealt with these things, and this is not really uncommon for the Congolese army to do these sorts of things, to like basically hold people in jail for ransom, um, and foreigners for ransom. So, and these are all my personal opinions. Does not reflect uh, uh, upon you, Brian, at all. This is just me. Um,
We're also,
but
I was thinking about this as you were talking. A lot of your issues seem to be from in a different part of the DRC that I'm going to go. So
mhm.
I think that's a little helpful. But anyway, you can keep going.
Yes, yes. Yes, yeah. Yeah, I mean, but, or I'll ask you after, but, 'cause it's almost over. And so I, uh, so yeah, they basically kind of hit the ground running almost instantly, because since I was there for 48 hours, according to the general, they just were unaware that I was transferred, which I think was kind of BS, because he's the head of the entire military justice of the Congolese military. So seems like something you should be aware about. Um, but they hit the ground running. Um, I say goodbye to the consular service, the embassy representatives. I go with the lawyer. They asked me to unlock my phone, give them the password, and I also had my Kindle with me, but they thought it was like a computer, so they asked for the code for that. But obviously, it's just a Kindle. And then they do the first interrogation at in Gombe, and the first set of problems arise because the OPJ at Camp Ketchech had doctored and changed the dates of the interrogation. They first of all, they just took away, they just completely left out my first interrogation. But my third interrogation, they said that was my first, and they said it was taken May 22nd when it was taken July 9th. And then they said that my follow-up that they did July 3rd was actually May 24th. So they lied to make it look like they were being proactive and they were actually investigating. But obviously, I didn't move for 6 weeks, or I didn't leave myself for 6 weeks. So they lied, and the OPJ of the colonel who was interrogating me now with my lawyer was like, that's impossible. How could they would not doctor information like that? And I was like, well, okay, I let my lawyer do all the talking for me, but there was like a 10-minute kind of argument saying that I wasn't like being truthful or something like that. Um, for this one, a lot of the same questions, but they asked me if I had been to the DRC before, and I had been to the DRC before. I was in the eastern parts near Goma and Bukavu in northern Kivu because I went to Kuzibiega National Park to go gorilla trekking. And uh, the uh, I also visited Ijwi and this place called Masala, which is in the north, which is now kind of a M23 stronghold. So they were they were kind of grilling me about why would you go to that area? What were you doing there? Etc. Etc. And I was like, I don't know. It's just what the itinerary that the guide that I had recommended, and I followed. So um, I was like, "What's the name of the guide?" And I told him the name, and I didn't know the last name. It was I had his name in my WhatsApp. I was like, "You have my phone. You can find his information. Do whatever." Um, and then they also showed me the names of some of the people that were arrested, the Americans, and they're like, "Do you know this person?" And I was like, "No, no." Are you sure? No. And that was kind of the main interrogation. Um, and there was a series of four interrogations. The next one was the following day with um, Lieutenant Colonel uh, Lieutenant Colonel Innocence uh, Rajabu. He was the basically the prosecutor of the coup d'état trial that was ongoing. So I was personally interrogated by him with the lawyer. And during all this, like they had a stenographer, the guy who types, kind of typed out the deposition, and they were asking me. His main questions were, "What did I have a visa? How did I get my visa?" I said, "Point Noir." He's like, "Are you a resident of Congo Brazzaville?" I said, "No." He's like, "How did you get a visa then?" "Well, they gave it to me." Um, "And why didn't you get a visa in the United States?" "Well, I didn't know how long the trip would take, so I couldn't plan it out that far ahead, like you're doing as well." Um, and so it was a very those were the main points of contention, and they also brought up, why didn't you report to the U.S. Embassy? And that was obviously some made up stuff that they said, just to put me in the wrong somehow, even though I wasn't. And then uh, that was the main point of contention. And then um, uh, they had a private conversation. I don't know if that was like theatrical for me or not, but the lawyer was speaking with the colonel about um, like putting pressure on him, the political implications between the United States and the Congo if I'm still kept in jail for longer than is necessary. They were saying it in French, so I don't know if it was for me to hear as kind of putting up this kind of ransom or continuing this ransom attempt against my dad. Um, but the stenographer who recorded everything for the second interrogation. He had some follow-up questions a third time. It was just basically some very short questions, and then the final interrogation was the fourth one where they found the Airbnb host, and she was very helpful. They had a they had a face-to-face interrogation with her where she basically told them that I was staying there, that she knew me. She even printed out all of our WhatsApp conversations and our conversation on Airbnb as proof. She went above and beyond for me, and she was like saying, "I'm sorry, Quinn. This is horrible. I'm trying to help you," and she was. Um, she did a lot. Um, and so, like she said, I was staying there and corroborated everything that I said, which really helped. And that was the fourth interrogation. And then there was the basically just had to wait for the basically tech computer technician to go through my phone and prove that I had no affiliation with the coup d'etat. And I knew that it was over because the night of July 18th, the general himself, he comes to see me and he's like, "We'll find a solution tomorrow." That's what he says. "We'll find a solution and you're gonna get out." Or basically that you're gonna get out. And you know, like everybody knew that was it. Everybody was like, he personally came to see you. That's really good. And what he said, that's very, very good. Um, and July 19th, in that morning, the um, the 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 U.S. Embassy representatives, the lawyer, everybody, he basically gives out his final verdict, and he says he has no affiliation with the coup d'état, but he did get his visa irregularly. So I think it's best that he leaves the country. And I was happy to leave. I was happy to take that flight. My dad was also, he was just waiting for the go ahead to buy the tickets to get out. And so, they're just like, they call the DGM, which is the immigration police. They're just like, witness him getting onto the flight and leaving. And so I was like, deported officially. They said they made me sign a document at the airport that said I was deported for undesirability, which I would which I was more than happy to sign as long as I was getting out. Um, and basically, anticipation is a killer. Those 2 hours of just waiting for that flight to take off, and then it was late because it came from the flight with Air France. It came from like Brazzaville. Goes to Brazzaville first, then it goes to Kinshasa, then it goes to Paris. And I was just like, shit, just get me on this fucking plane, man, in my head, you know? And then I the DGM and the police come with me, and someone from Air France takes my passport because apparently when you're deported, they give it to the pilot. I guess if you're like, because technically I was like, I guess I was imprisoned and I was, I guess a prisoner. So they the they did give me back my passport. So I just had to talk with the pilot came to talk to me, and he was like, "What happened?" And I gave him a brief overview, and he was just like, "Okay, I'm very happy you're on this flight, my friend. If you need any help, I'm here." And I just kind of, I sat in my seat, and once it started to go off, the plane went off. Then it was real, and I just started to break down, crying, and it was just finally over. Like
Where was the
it was
flight to?
Paris, Paris. It was
Uh,
Air France.
okay.
Um, I had a continuing flight to Nashville. That's where my parents live now, but it was just like, finally, this shit is over, you know? And, yeah, it like, when I was in Paris, it didn't feel quite real. I, spoke with, like, a lot of my loved ones and some friends that I met along the trip, um, and, it was finally over, and then take my next flights, and I finally get to see my dad again. I get to hug my dad. It was a very long and it's a very loving hug. It was very necessary because it was just finally, you know, it, it just to see my family again was, and also at that point it had been 10 months. So
My
the
Oh, yeah, because the travel before that.
right. So it was just like so hard. But it was finally over and I was home and never gonna go to the Congo again.
No. What's your, how's been like, the life since then? How have you recovered to everyday normal life?
I've been trying to. It's been up and down. Like I basically I was living in Morocco for the past 4 months or so. I spent like a month in my parents' house, then I went to Morocco because I was seeing a girl there. But then things did not work out, so it did bring my mental health down again. She was but she supported me a lot emotionally the days after, and my dad, and just kind of talking things through, writing it down, one to just remember what happened, and but also as a cathartic therapeutic experience, just kind of you don't want to bottle any of those things up. I had been I've just really been focusing on training and like exercising, keeping on a consistent routine that keeps my mind active and my body active. So I've been studying Arabic. I was studying Arabic in Morocco, Moroccan Darija, and that's how I keep my mind
Okay.
active. And then I was also uh, I've been training for a mountain in. I'm gonna climb Aconcagua next month. So basically,
You're
for the past,
you're a mountaineer, right? Like, you do like, I noticed on some of your you do some climbing.
I'm not a professional, but I guess I'm an amateur mountaineer. I've climbed Kilimanjaro, Mount Vinson. It's the tallest peak in Antarctica, and I've climbed a bit in Alaska, not Mount Denali, but some more technical, more difficult peaks. Um, so yeah, that's why I'm in Uray at the moment. It's a great place to ice climb and just kind of
Okay.
really focus on training and just kind of keeping my mind active, keeping things, have a really set goal, have something to look forward to because things have gotten a lot better, at least on this aspect. Um, since basically September, I booked this because I was like, I had a feeling of being lost for sure. Like, just like, I don't know what to do now. I don't know. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna train for this mountain the next 7 months now that I've been consistently training and training hard. And it's been great. I see my body physically improving. I'm healthier now. It's just,
Helps them.
yeah, it's important to work your mind and your body. So that's why I'm gonna continue the Arabic course. I've been continuing online. Not Moroccan Darija, but I've been studying more Jordanian now. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, it's
Well,
just yeah.
that's maybe the most wild story I've ever heard. That was crazy. Like,
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was I was just kind of I guess I didn't give you the opportunity to speak that much, but yeah, thank you for letting me say it, speak about it.
dude, no worries. I mean, you're the guest, I was just listening at that point. I didn't need to be too involved in this. I was just hearing your story. It sounds wild. It also gives me, some hesitation going into the DRC,
I
but
mean,
I
my
am.
I'm gonna be honest. I wouldn't recommend it. I would just skip it if I were you. That's but obviously I had a really fucked up experience.
I'll show you what. One sec. I'll show you. So working, not necessarily working, but like talking with. There's a company here called Africell.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a cell
it's
company, cell phone.
Yeah, like Verizon or AT&T or any of those,
Yeah.
and they have headquarters in the Dominican Republic of Congo, and so they're actually helping work with the visa for me. And if I get one, I think I'll be like under their umbrella of like I'm I'll have like aid in the country. I'll have a little bit of sponsorship money. Like that's what it looks like is going to happen. Nothing's final yet,
Like, what are
but
you like, what's your route exactly?
um, just the road from Luanda to Kinshasa, and then just straight on the western side. There's two ways that I could go to Soyo, Angola, and then take the boat to Cabinda.
That's what I would
If I
recommend.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm stuck in Luanda right now in terms of like I'm waiting. I got robbed, and so my cards and my phone, everything was taken. So I was
Yes,
waiting
I
for that.
yeah, I saw that
I'm
post. I'm sorry, my friend.
yeah, yeah, no worries. Waiting for waiting for my visa for Brazzaville to come in. Waiting for the potential visa to DRC to come in, and everything's closed because it's Christmas holidays. So I'm just kind of waiting.
Yeah. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. It's good to take breaks on these long trips.
Yeah, but I found myself getting like week or two. I see what you're saying. I used to do just train for this. I was doing 100 burpees for time every day, like to get in shape, and I was pretty jacked. And
Yeah,
then yesterday,
that'll do
I
it.
did uh, I did 56 push-ups, and it was dead. Like I was gonna do 10 sets of 10, but I did 5 sets of 10, and the sixth set I got the six. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm done for the day.
I mean, that's a lot. If you can do, like I do that with a TRX a lot, um, like a suspension trainer. So that's what I do
Yeah.
to work out. I carry one in my backpack when I'm traveling, um, and I can just hang it up on a tree or something, and I could just. The point is, particularly for me, because I have my cerebral palsy. I need to really work out all the time, and my body will
Yeah.
atrophy so quickly. I
Okay.
need to do it. So that's why I need
Huh.
to train all the time. And that was
Okay.
one of the horrible parts about being in the jail, being sedentary and not moving. When you're shoulder to shoulder someone, like my muscle just went away, and you know. So yeah, I totally feel that. I would really advise, I guess, just like dips and body weight squats do a lot. If you can do like 70 or like 100, work up to that. That will do a lot for your legs.
Well, my legs are good from the walking, but
Yeah.
it's the up that's ac but
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
I want to thank you for your time and thank you for coming on.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Thank you.
is there anything else you wish to add or tell people about your trip, about your journey before we sign off?
Uh, I guess if you can, I guess you can read about my polar steps on Instagram. Um, and just all my links are there if you want to read about it. More extensively, I wrote in depth about each step and have pictures. Um, and that's kind of how I document everything.
Okay. Well, thank you, Quinn, so much for coming on, and thanks to everyone who will eventually watch and listen to this. It's been a
Yes.
pleasure having you.
Yeah, yeah, and safe travels, my friend. Keep me posted if you need anything. And
Will do.
yeah, yeah. Cheers. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, take care.